My name is Shary Boyle. I'm a contemporary visual artist, and I see our topic through the lens of a narrative image maker, imagining the future as a kind of fiction. And so, as the last speaker of the night, I'm going to read you a bedtime story. The conservator waded gracefully through the European galleries, parting water past the archives. His good pants ballooned above his knees, cuffed in castaway tatters. Scavengers splashed along with their heads poking through Gainsborough portraits, lace collars framing their faces. The effect was hilarious, even he had to admit it. Drought, fire, hurricanes, the poisoned air, face masks and food wars. The seawater rose tight along the coast, then brimmed over the meniscus. For a moment, one felt sweet relief from the awful heat. Most of us expired. The survivors who started with less had less to lose and seemed to adapt better to the changes. The ultra-rich were gone to the moon, leaving the blue-chip artists behind. The artists were unsure of their legacies. Who would evaluate them if not the future? Investment speculation and the opening night gala eloped to some sexless bunker trying to figure out how to open a can of beans. The auction hammer went silent. Studio assistants floated by clinging to chunks of driftwood. No one rescued the secondary market. The conservator found the door to the restoration studio and pushed with fragile might. His memory was racked from starvation and rickety with age, but he was sure about this Francis Bacon left on the easel half a century ago. The bacon had smoke damage. He had been in the process of cleaning it with a soft slice of Wonder Bread and his own spit when the sirens went off. Out of the frying pan into the fire. In the years of chaos that followed, the bacon had fouled. But in the nuclear sunset of his life, the conservator remembered its sheer sadistic vitality, and he hungered for it. Outside, the sun's staring problem was especially aggressive to white skin. Brown and golden skin fared better. The less connection to the land and water people had had, the harder it was for them to adapt. The survivors turned to those who had maintained continuous ties to the earth. Dog-strangling vine choked Ottawa. Indigenous and Northern affairs had been struck by a gigantic ball of lightning, the billions of files exploding into toxic stars that fell into ash. With the government dissolved and population decimated, national identity finally gave up the ghost. The old white mothers and fathers had perished, leaving behind a new generation who saw the founding project of Canada as a genocidal, gaslighting, racist, capitalist, colonial resource extraction shitshow. The work of these surviving youth was to dismantle the relics of their own white supremacy and collect dues for the manifesto of reparations. We all knew nothing could heal without attending to the original wounds. The betrayed earth demanded to be returned to Indigenous stewardship. It took the crisis of mass extinction to make it so. A beam of unnatural daylight bisected the museum's restoration room, drawing the conservator towards the bacon. His face was magnetized to the canvas. By long habit, his eyes calculated the fading pigments. The glory of red was lost. Blue had crashed. The yellows swaddled in a shroud of mold. But he hadn't come for the color. His eyes swung up to the broken window as a canoe from the Oceania department floated by, packed to the gunnels with neoclassical statuary. He heard the familiar songs of the body collectors as they rafted the dead to burial. He sank his hand deep into his pocket to draw out his knife. Cutting the canvas away from the wooden stretcher in a clean rectangle, the conservator softly tore the bacon into thin strips along the grain. Selecting one precious tendril like a Charlie Chaplin bootlace, he lifted it towards his mouth and let his saliva begin the slow, delicious dissolution of unbinding the rabbit skin glue. Nearby, deep in a vine-cloaked ravine, some rubble under the overpass had given way to reveal a fissure in the earth. Cool air trickled out with the faint, erotic smell of wet cement. A girl had been living in the ravine, hunting raccoons. There was a group of creatives, actually, of all ages, a collective. Most of them were sexed female or ambiguous. The plastics had won that battle. Males hadn't been born for decades. The salamanders and alligators could barely resist, and I told you so. But this was okay, as it meant the patriarchy was finally over. No more school shootings. No more dick pics. No more Fords. No more military cover-ups, corporate bonuses, popes, or barbecue. It was too late for museum acquisitions parody and international solo shows, but long dormant seeds were stirring. Their grandmothers had taught them how to survive through trauma, and some of those lessons involved slipping through cracks while no one was paying attention. The gender ambiguous and females were very good at this and knew how to find hidden entrances. Through the doorway in the ravine, our gently gendered collaborators descended single file towards a cool blackness. They squeezed through this damp and narrow passage, clinging to the sound of their breath like a dummy string. There was no turning back. Just as panic bore down, they felt the space radically expand and bumbled into it. The dripping of water echolocuted wide clay walls. It was a cave system. The clay sounded like porcelain. Was it an abandoned subway system? Somebody struck a match. The strike illuminated the station. Quickly, they lit a fire, and the movement of the flames animated their shadows along the long tiled wall. Helping each other, they dropped onto the tracks and explored for clues of sheltering and ritual. There were a few skulls, some spilled pop still sticky after 50 years. A bare footprint in the dirt that was not quite human. That mystery was solved moments later with the discovery of a red-haired orangutan corpse nestled under the platform's edge, an escapee of the Scarborough Zoo. Her parents had been born in Borneo. They started the song they sang for the dead. The acoustics down there were amazing. It was natural to act out the story of the orangutan. Someone picked up a torch, and their shadows grew wild and strange. When the song was over, they drifted together towards the wall. One by one, they held their hands aloft and traced their fingers with looted lipstick across the tiles. They were here.